Wonderful to be here, as Kelly said, beautiful deal. I realize I'm the only person standing between you and the drink on the pier, and we have 10 minutes till that drink, so I'll try and be as quick as I can. I'm going to talk about the fatal bias. If you like, this comprises a set of widely held and deeply entrenched beliefs and practices in business today that is very, very detrimental to wealth creation. The belief, for example, that economics is about efficiency, essentially about efficiency. The belief that management is the exercise of control and coordination rather than curiosity and discovery. The belief that economic progress consists essentially in the elimination of waste. The belief that costs are the home of most of the waste in business, and the belief that costs are generally too high and need to be continuously cut. I think, for example, if we think about one of the fundamental processes in a business, how management, how performance is managed, it's essentially the left-hand side. We start with a winning formula, the basis upon which we believe we can create wealth, defeat competitors, succeed in markets and so on, and from that we derive a set of targets, we derive a set of, or invent a set of metrics to track progress against those targets, and to put a bit of oomph into the system, we need some kind of an incentive, usually a financial incentive. Think of the right-hand side. The right-hand side, unlike the thermostat on the left-hand side that's controlling the temperature at 65 degrees, a closed self-referential system, it cannot ask the question, is 65 degrees the right temperature? Just as the left-hand side cannot ask the question, is the winning formula based upon a true understanding of human nature? How customers make choices, how leadership is exercised, how the future will be different. It's only when we move to the right-hand side and start to interrogate our own assumptions that we are fully rational. We can't dispense entirely with the left-hand side, but we shouldn't be pathologically fixated by it. So the art of asking the testing question, of coming up with interesting and speculative alternative ideas and options, and the courage to actually commit those ideas to some experiment and allow nature to make the choice rather than senior management. That's what we mean by rationality in business. One of my teachers at the Wharton School, something like 50 years ago, terrible thought, the righter we do the wrong thing, the wronger we become. And therefore, when we correct a mistake doing the wrong thing, we become wronger still. It's better to do the right thing wrong than the wrong thing right. The left-hand side is doing the wrong thing righter and righter and righter. The right-hand side is doing the right thing, albeit wrongly, but with experimentation slightly better every time that we practice it. So the left-hand side, these are the telltale practices that we observe in business that betray this pathological, fatal bias towards this sub-rational thinking. Best practice, where did that come from? Probably London Business School, if not us, Harvard or Warwick. What is best practice? All the players in the same game, if they define practice as best, they will come to the same, by definition, will come to the same definition of best practice. So the more we practice best practice, the more like we become. Markets punish commodities. Best practice is a classic commoditization of thought. Operational excellence, just the, if you like, the aristocratic word for cost cutting. A competitive benchmarking. The benchmark for a cost isn't the competitor, it's the strategy we're pursuing. The more unique, the better, and so on and so forth. Budgeting. Think of budgeting. That's a competition to get away with the lowest aspiration that we can, for example. These are profoundly mistaken and dangerous practices, and yet extraordinarily general in business. As Gary Hamel suggested, sort of like the left-hand thinking, hyper-rational executives produce hyper-boring products. Right-hand side, think of the distinction between type 1 mistakes and type 2 mistakes. Type 1 mistakes, good mistakes, Darwinian mistakes, evolutionary mistakes, the kind of mistakes that produced us as a species, doing something that goes wrong, but with a powerful selection mechanism gradually enhancing fitness. Type 2 mistakes, the serious mistakes, are not having the courage to try something that if only we had, could have gone right. That's the real, if you like, location of waste in our economic practices. What do these firms have in common? This is a big study by Deloitte. 74 out of 25,000 companies studied over a 50-year time period produced 74 miracle workers. These are some of them. What do they have in common? Now, I realize I'm coming close to Kelly's survivor bias and so on and so forth, but let me push on irrationally, predictably irrationally. These are their three rules. We should always be aware of rules when we're playing a sophisticated game, like competing in markets. But they're quite interesting in the way that they rule out certain assumptions that lie deep within the belief system of most businesses. Their rules were better before cheaper. In other words, concentrate on non-price differentiators in your product or service. Revenue before cost, grow the top line rather than cut the middle lines. It's interesting, isn't it, that in management accounts we have one line for revenue and we have about 1,001 lines for cost. So where do we look for savings? Finally, if we're growing revenue, it's better done through increasing prices than increasing in volumes. Those are the three rules. And in a sense, what these data suggest are, first of all, that higher costs than competitors would seem to be the main prerequisite for superior long-run performance. So the ingenuity of business is to find costs that are higher, but yield still higher revenues, if you see what I mean. Competitive success is the result of discovering value through insight, to go back to some of Kelly's observations, rather than efficiency simply through effort. And cost-cutting is almost always a counterproductive strategy. The Deloitte team in those 24,000 companies couldn't find a single company that could, if you like, that could legitimately claim to have cost leadership as the source of their success. I think they found two, which if you sufficiently tortured the data, could be shown perhaps to have cost as one element of their success. But it was never the whole of their success, even in those two. Think of price competition in British supermarkets. Tesco was founded in 1919. They still haven't secured a sufficient emotional hold, a reputational hold, a trust hold on the British population to command even a tiny price premium over its competitors. Amazing. Very rarely, this is their summary, very rarely is cost leadership a driver of superior profitability. If you position companies on a 2x2 with wealth creation at the top, wealth destruction at the bottom, lower costs than our competitors on the left, higher costs than our competitors on the right, almost all the winners are in the top right-hand quadrant. The top left-hand quadrant is empty. The winning trajectory would seem to be from best practice, which is a losing position, to unique practice, and the losing direction of travel is from waste to efficiency. It simply doesn't work, not in the long run. On average, boards in Britain devote 9 times more attention to spending and counting cash flow rather than wondering where it came from and how it could be increased. Tim Ambler, one of the directors of IDV before it became part of Diageo. So when margins shrink and costs become an issue in business, the market is screaming at us that it's our strategy that is threadbare. The art of strategy is to stay one step ahead of the need to be efficient. Thank you very much.